Hey everyone, here to preview week 25 MLS action. We have a loaded 14-game slate this weekend. We missed the past couple of match weeks after posting for match week 22. Couldn't get around to posting for those weeks, but we're back now. And in the meantime, there were some crazy results. We had the midweek 4th of July slate and last weekend slate back to back. And in that time, El Tráfico happened. LAFC beat LA Galaxy for a huge 2-1 win at the Rose Bowl, so kudos to them. They remain top of the West. And then also Cincinnati thrashing Miami 6-1 without Messi and co. That's their first non-win in the time that he and a couple other key players have been gone. So Cincinnati now first in the East and with a game in hand. So they're definitely in the mix for that Sport Shield once again. And yeah, so we're going to look ahead to this slate. And in the past couple of days, though, a couple teams have had U.S. Open Cup action. It was the quarterfinals. And it was a mixed bag of results for these MLS teams against some weaker opposition. Atlanta got upset by Indy 11. So Indy 11 into the semifinal, their first ever appearance there. And then we had the Sounders beating Sacramento Republic on the road 2-1. So they booked their semifinal spot, and they'll be facing LAFC, who took care of business, basically put out damn near a full strength lineup against New Mexico United. They won 3-1 at home. So it'll be LAFC versus Sounders in that first semifinal, and then it'll be Indy 11 facing Sporting Kansas City after Kansas City played Dallas. They beat them in extra time. They had just played an MLS action the weekend prior, and then they got to play a rematch. Both matches were in Kansas City. Kansas City beat them in both of those games. So we have the semifinal set that'll come later down the line, but that's going to affect those teams' rotations and their approach to these games this weekend. So keep that in mind, and I'll be going over every game as usual and have some betting picks included, but just going over every game, notables, people who are out and in, and what to look out for. So let's get into those games. So first game of the slate, and coincidentally it's our first best bet of the show, and it's going to be a theme for this week's episode actually, that I'm looking to fade some of these teams who have had those midweek games, Open Cup games or what have you. And we're starting off with Montreal taking on Atlanta. Both these teams in the lower portion of the Eastern standings. And I'm going with Montreal team total over 1.5 for even odds here. I really see this as a good spot to fade Atlanta because it's now 3 losses on the bounce, including this midweek Open Cup loss to Indy 11. And they looked really, really poor. They didn't even get to play at the Benz, their actual stadium, for that game. They was just somewhere else in Georgia. But before that, they had back-to-back road games against the Revs, and then they had to travel last weekend to RSL all the way out west. Now they come back home, and now after this midweek game, they have to go all the way up to Montreal. So it's just a lot of travel, and they sent out a pretty decently strong lineup against Indy 11. So that's just adding to the rotation and the heavy legs. And Montreal gets to stay home after last week's result. They've actually been unbeaten in their last 6 home games. 2 wins, and 4 draws in that time. They've scored at least 2 in 3 of those games and held respectable teams such as the Whitecaps and RSL to draws. So they've definitely made it tough for these teams when they've been playing at home. They're trying to turn things around, and they've gotten a couple of reinforcements back. They have Kokoro back now, Opoku, and unfortunately Canada was knocked out of Copa America, but they get to play their third place match. So some of these midfield guys won't be coming back for this game, most likely. I'm not sure, if some players get to go or whatever, but I'd, lean that everyone's going to stay for that third place game. But regardless, I just think Atlanta also, they're losing Caleb Wiley, one of their wingbacks, who offers a lot on both ends. And Gregerson, probably their best defender, center back, played basically full 90 in the Indy 11 games. So it's not like he's not going to go for this game, but it just adds to the tired legs. I think this is a really good spot to fade Atlanta. And I'd rather trust Montreal's team total than their money line because this defense on paper, the numbers, and just everything have been horrendous. One of the worst in the league, if not the worst, recently. So, yeah, I'm not going to trust this defense. I think Atlanta, just the way they're set up, they won't just kind of really sit back here. I think this could be an open game where Montreal has the potential to cover this total and potentially win, but I'd rather just trust one side of the ball here. Next up, we got DC United dead last in the East, taking on Nashville, who is not looking so hot themselves. And this is a tough one to call. DC United 10 winless. Sorry, 11. 8 losses in that time. They've gotten a red card in 3 out of their last 4 matches. Once again, not helping themselves at all. And they just got thrashed 5-0 on the road at Orlando. Nashville, on the other hand, they were coming off back-to-back losses. They were really hard done in that Crew game with some questionable referee calls for sure. And then it just rolled over into a road match against Timbers last weekend, and they gave up 4 in the first, I think, 25 minutes or half an hour. Ended 4-1. And yeah, this, even with Zimmerman, the defense was looking much better with Zimmerman back for sure, but in recent games, 3 losses now in a row, starting with that Miami loss. It's just something's off. And, you know, they got a couple players back, like Shaq Moore as well, to help that wing play and such, but 2 teams really not looking good. And DC should be full strength in terms of their attack here. Benteke is going to be back, but I mean, their defensive numbers are just so poor. Both of these teams really unreliable defensively. Nashville's really stagnant offensively. And you know it's bad when DC United opens up the transfer window and signs a defensive midfielder. Not a DP spot, but still, like, that's just the sign of where things are headed. Just so many injuries on the defensive front. And Nashville obviously traveling a lot recently, so this one's really hard to call. But I think just generally with DC United, goals are always on the cards. And Zimmerman might not even be in for this game because he's part of that Olympic roster as one of the overage players. So I'm going to say this game is a draw for these teams. I say 2-2. Neither team finds the 3 points. Cincinnati hosts Charlotte in this one. Cincinnati back up top the East after that 6-1 thrashing of Miami. And Charlotte, on the other hand, kind of in a bit of a stumble here. They went on the road to the Dynamo, got shut out 1-0. And then the past weekend, or past midweek in that 4th of July slate, they lost a close match to Inter Miami. Kramaschke scored in the final moments. And so now it's 2 losses in a row now. But once again, they're really defensively solid. Both these teams are top 5 defensive teams number-wise, expected goals allowed-wise. Cincinnati's offensive production just a little bit better. And that's been really the main problem with Charlotte as to why they're not one of these upper echelon teams, because the defense is absolutely elite, but the offense really is questionable sometimes. And now they have Aguimeng, their top striker option at the moment. He's suspended for this one, and I think for the next game after this as well, because he got a red card in that Miami game, but I think he's suspended on yellows as well for the next game. So they're going to be probably trialing Tavares and others, and Świderski is coming back from his loan, but he won't be an option until I think the next game or the next weekend once that transfer window opens. So really, it's just kind of Abada on the wing and Vargas. And listen, Cincinnati's defensive core here is really messed up, as we've talked about. No Hagelin, no Miazga out for the year. And it's yet to be seen if Miles Robinson plays this game, because he's once again also part of that Olympic squad as one of those overage players. So we're going to have to see in the coming days what happens with that. But especially if he's out, this defensive core is just so, messed up that Cincinnati has been and should be getting into back and forth high scoring games, because the offense is really not a problem. Everyone's stepping up. Orellano is going absolutely berserk on the wing as a wingback, and really has stepped up his production in recent weeks. And it just seems that everyone who's plugging into the system is producing. So I lean a Cincinnati win here just because of how questionable Charlotte's offense can be. But Charlotte hasn't lost a road game this year. In their road losses, they haven't lost by more than 1 goal. So I think they keep this close. And it's hard to back Cincinnati's defense to keep a clean sheet with all their defensive woes right now. So I'm going to say 2-1 to Cincinnati. They keep this streak going after 4 wins in their last 5. New England hosting Orlando. New England 12th in the East, Orlando 7th. Orlando definitely in the better form. 2 wins in a row, 3 wins in their last 4. They just bounced DC, like we talked about recently, 5-0 at home. But they have Duncan Maguire, one of their lead striker options, going to the Olympics. He's already gone for camp since the camp has started. And on the other hand, the Revs are likely going to be without Carles Hill and Barrero and maybe Boateng, as Caleb Porter just announced that recently, that they're probably likely not even going to be, options off the bench even. So this one's really hard to call because the Revs numbers obviously have been terrible. Vrioni's really been stepping up recently and carrying this attack in terms of goal scoring production, but Muriel for Orlando as well just hasn't been, worthy of a DP signing. That's 100%, undeniable. And they've definitely looked a little bit better recently. Anyone can look good against DC though. But before they got a really gutsy win at Toronto. They beat the Fire. The travel's going to be a factor here, but even though both these defenses have been suspect, I just don't see where the offensive production comes from either of these teams. I lean Orlando, but I think neither of these teams is really good enough to walk out with 3 points here. I'm going to say 1-1 in New England. Another Eastern matchup with two teams in just absolutely abysmal form. Toronto hosting Union in this one, and Toronto has lost 6 in a row. They just actually lost. They had their own midweek matchup in the Canadian Cup semifinal against one of the Canadian League teams, and they lost the first leg with a pretty decent lineup for their standards. They played both their stars, Bernardeschi and Insigne. Bernardeschi played like 75 minutes. Insigne played the full 90. So that's going to add to their, legs and fitness for this one. And meanwhile, Philly haven't won in their last 9 matches, looking just terrible as well. There's not much else to say. It's hard to put trust in either of these teams. But the way the lineups are looking and the way that Toronto, I just feel like, is in much more dire form, honestly, especially losing that Canadian Cup game and having to play the midweek game just in general. I kind of lean Philly here. They're kind of getting a couple players. They're losing a couple players, but they're also getting a couple players back. They lost McGlynn and Harriel to the Olympics, so they're gone. That's a big key 2 players for their midfield and defense. But Ure seems fit. He might be going here in attack, so that definitely boosts their chances. And the likes of Martinez and Bueno we're seen practicing in the last couple days and should be options if not starting. So that definitely adds to their defensive midfield struggles. And yeah, Toronto just offensively doesn't really offer much besides these star players kind of taking it all on themselves once in a while. So I think Philadelphia just has a slight advantage here. Toronto, on shorter rest. Philadelphia obviously has to travel. But I think Philly, I'm going to put my trust in them. And for them to pull out this result, just squeak by, I'm going to say 2-1 to the Union. Here's a match that just screams goalless to me and just an under. Austin taking on Sounders, 9th versus 7th in the West, and the Sounders are definitely in better form. They've won 4 straight in a row, including that Sacramento Republic midweek match. They had to travel to Sacramento. Before that, they had 3 home matches in a row, so although they have this midweek match and, they have to travel, they traveled shortly to Cali, and now they're going to Texas. I don't see this being too much of a problem for them. They did go pretty strong in that match in terms of their lineup, but Austin's defensive numbers are just terrible. Seattle's actually really picked it up in the past month or so, and now they're a top 6 defense numbers-wise. The core is definitely stabilizing, and De La Vega's back. That definitely adds another dynamic to their squad. Austin coming off another home win against NYCFC. That was pretty impressive. Giassi Zardes coming out of nowhere and getting a brace in that game. But really, that's just a once-in-a-blue moon type of performance. Austin definitely has a clear difference in their, attacking philosophy and just general setup between home and away. So that definitely gives them a bit of a boost here, but I just think Sounders are going to really make this difficult for Austin, who really, to me, just don't look dynamic enough. and Sounders on that short rest. I just see this being a low-scoring game where maybe the Sounders squeak it out, just show their class a little bit more. And I'm going to lean. I'm going to say I think it's goalless, but if anyone has a chance to win this match, I think the Sounders, they've had a bit of a success here recently. And I'm going to say 1-0 to the Sounders. The Chicago Fire get to host NYCFC in another Eastern Conference matchup. And just when the Fire pull you in and then get an amazing, unbelievable 3-1 comeback win against the Union and 4-3, they get to go to San Jose, which was kind of personally just an unbelievable schedule because they played Sounders, then they had to play Union midweek, and then on the weekend have to go back to the West Coast. That's just bizarre, but regardless, you have to play the worst team in the league after that Union win, and you go scoreless and you lose. You give the Earthquakes their first shutout of the season and lose. It's just hard to feel any momentum with this team at all. And NYCFC, on the other hand, is definitely a Jekyll and Hyde type of situation, road and away, or home and away. And it's 3 losses in a row now on the road. They lost Tavon Gray to injury early on in that Austin match, which definitely makes me a little bit more worried about their defense, especially on the road. But they've had a little bit of success against Chicago, recently, and Chicago is just a little bit more unpredictable to me. I think, NYCFC is still a top 10 defense and offense based on the numbers, and I just like them here in this spot. I just don't see any continuity with this Fire team, unfortunately, and I think if anyone pulls out a result here, it's NYCFC. Could be a draw in the hands, but I'm going to lean 2-1 to NYCFC, get a much-needed road win after recent struggles. So for the second best bet of the show, I'm taking LA Galaxy team total over 1.5 at even odds. It should be still floating between like -105, +105, depending on where you get it. But Dallas hosting Galaxy here. Galaxy have to go on the road. Galaxy as hot as ever. They lost at El Trafico, but besides that, 4 wins in their last 5. And Dallas, 4 losses in their last 5, including having to play that Open Cup match against Kansas City. So they had to play back-to-back games at Kansas City, especially midweek. They went pretty strong for their standards. Musa played a lot. A lot of their core played a lot, especially the defense. And they're just not looking great right now. At home, they've been really, really good. 6 wins in their last 8 games, but they've given up at least 2 goals in their last 3 out of 5 home games. So even if they're getting the results, they've been really, really leaky. They're a bottom 6 defense in the league. The Galaxy obviously doesn't even need to be talked about how dynamic this offense is. But the only reason this isn't a 2-unit play for me is because Jovic just got ruled out as their main striker option, and that means Miguel Berry is going to start, and I've obviously had and said my piece on him. He's a less than ideal backup option, but there's kind of a difference here between the way Dallas is going to set up and Austin when Galaxy had to go play Austin and Miguel Berry started in that one. Austin got an early lead and they just kind of packed it in, and that's just kind of what they do. But I think this game has the potential and should be much more open, and obviously Dallas is not going to be as fresh. Obviously they have their own traveling to do as well. So regardless, I think with their defensive woes, Galaxy's attacking, just how dynamic they are, I think the pieces around Barry can get him the ball, and this shouldn't be one where they're just trying to break down a defense like that. I think Dallas will keep things open, and if any team can cover this type of line, Galaxy will. But obviously with the Jovic out, that leaves a little bit more to be desired and a little bit more volatility. So I'm going to stick with the normal 1-unit play here, but I'm still going to trust this offense to get it done, even though they haven't looked as much of an auto lock for this play to hit on the road recently. It's just a spot where Dallas, I think that these two things balance each other out with the Jovic out and Dallas on such short rest, playing so much, and just their general defensive, how poor they've been. So the Dynamo taking on Minnesota in this one, and the Dynamo actually get a little bit of rest after their last weekend's game against LAFC was postponed due to the hurricane and just absolutely awful weather. The pitch was drenched. They tried to delay it, and eventually it just got postponed. So they get a little bit more rest here. Their last match was on the 3rd. Meanwhile, Minnesota played their normal match last weekend, and they lost once again. 6 losses in a row for Minnesota now, absolutely tumbling down the Western standings after a really surprising and optimistic start to the season. And they have to continue their travels here after going from LA now to Houston, and they're still not getting many more of these players back. They got actually Pookie back for that Galaxy game. He scored a really good goal from outside the box, but still without their top striker option in Oluwuse. He's going to stay with Canada, I'd imagine, because they're playing that 3rd place game, like I said. So unfortunate for them that he's not back for this one, probably. But it's really hard to trust them here. They continue their road trip. Houston, on the other hand, is a top 6 defense, and they really keep things tight, especially at home. Before this past loss to RSL recently, which you can't really fault them for that. They really kept things close. Before that loss, they were unbeaten in their last 6 games, and they had 3 wins in that time. Especially at home, they're really, really impressive. And I just really like where this lineup's headed. Karski should be back. He's been out of the tournament with Panama for quite some time now, so I'd be surprised if he doesn't go here. Ferreira's been really stepping up recently before Ponce comes and probably obviously takes that number 9 spot. But this core group, Herrera, Bassi, Artur, like, the midfield is really, really sound, and it's just hard to see Minnesota offering much here offensively. But we'll see where these things go. I think the added rest for Houston, they get to stay at home. I think that gives them another boost here, and I'm going to lean Houston in this one. It's really hard to get a result in Houston most of the time, and Minnesota is not high on confidence whatsoever. So I'm going to say 2-0 to Houston, and they get a valuable 3 points. A rematch from a couple weeks ago between St. Louis and Vancouver, and Vancouver had to play a midweek game. They're also in the semifinals of that Canadian Cup. They got a 1-0 win against Pacific FC, so props to them. They put out a pretty decent lineup, especially with their attackers in Gauld and White. But yeah, they got that win in the reverse fixture with that crazy Brian White hat trick coming down from 0-2, I believe. And they're looking much more competent as of late, especially on the offensive end. And 3 wins in their last 4, or unbeaten in their last 3, actually. MLS, 2 wins, 1 draw. They recently had to travel to Montreal and got that 1-1 result. So, decent result there. St. Louis, on the other hand, their only win in the past, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 games has been to San Jose at home. And Lowen and Berkey got knocked up in that last game, but it seems like they're going to be good to go here. So that's definitely an added boost, because without especially Lowen, I definitely would have had a bet including the Whitecaps, but just added that they're coming back, and the Whitecaps have that midweek game, and they have to continue this continuous travel. I'm not going to make it an official play. Maybe once lineups come out and I see that, maybe I'll post that on Twitter. But just for now, I think there's still goals in this one, because St. Louis just defensively is a mess. And even if Berkey goes, this backline is so banged up, and they're playing a lot of these City 2 players as well. It just really depends what strength the lineup is for Vancouver. But I can see them squeaking out another win here, and this being a high-scoring one. So we'll just have to see where the lineups go for this one, because it's a little questionable. But I say that Vancouver probably edges this one out. Once again, St. Louis just really dreadful, especially up front before these signings come. I'm going to say 2-1 to Vancouver. A really interesting clash here as the Rapids host Red Bull, both 4th in their respective conferences. And Rapids have been really, really solid at home recently. 5 wins in their last 6, but they've given up a goal in 4 of those games at home. So the offense has been clicking. The defense has been, leaky at least, and they've been without Bombito obviously for some time now because of the Canada Copa America run, and they won't be with him here as well. And they've also had Abubakar out for last game, and it's questionable if he goes here, so that just adds to their kind of defensive susceptibility. And Red Bulls, on the other hand, haven't really been very convincing. They're pulling out a lot of draws out of the hat. 2 straight draws now. 1 to a 10-man DC United 2-2, and then recently 0-0 on the road to the Union. And they have 4 draws in the last 5 games. They're unbeaten in the last 5 games, but 4 of those are draws. And yeah, Forsberg has been placed on the injury list, so he's going to be out for some time now, and possibly part of League Cup, I think. So that's a big blow for them. Obviously, one of their main creative options. Frankie Amaya has gone now to Mexico, and John Tolkien, one of the wingbacks, is with that Olympic squad. So a lot of pieces missing. Obviously, Lewis Morgan came back from the Euros, but I just don't see how this midfield really creates for their attacking options, because that's obviously been a big worry in recent seasons, and that's why they brought in Forsberg. So this one does have a scent of a draw on it, but I think Colorado's attacking flair, even without Mihalovic now also gone for the Olympics, I think their replacements are just a little bit more creative and getting to stay at home during this great home stretch. And then the Red Bulls have been traveling now from the Union to the West Coast, or in the mountain time. I'm gonna give the edge to the Rapids here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bulls bagged one, just because of Rapids' losses in the center back department. But I'm gonna say 2-1 to the Rapids. They get another home win. They've been really, really impressive there. Portland taking on RSL in what I think is one of the top 3 or so best matchups of the week in a really high-end Western Conference battle. And I'm taking, for my third best bet here, I'm taking RSL team total over 1.5 plus 110 odds. RSL sitting second in the West. They were on that 50-match unbeaten run, and then after losing to the Galaxy to snap that in their past 2 games at home, they've put up 8 goals in those 2 games combined, but they've also given up 2 goals in each of those games. And Justin Glad, one of their best defenders, has been missing for several weeks now, and it's definitely been taking a toll on their defense, and they've definitely been a little bit more leaky. And Portland, on the other hand, have won 6 out of their last 9 games. They've won their last 5 out of 6 at home. They've put up 2 goals at home in all of their last 6 matches at home. So they're definitely clicking offensively. They just put up 4 in that first half against Nashville, like we mentioned, and it's really hard to bet against this team's offense. And this total for the game in general is going to be like 3.5 anyways. So I expect this to be a shootout either way, but I'm simply going to trust the better team to put up 2 here, because RSL is obviously one of the top teams in the West. They've hit this mark on the road in 6 out of their 11 road games, so that's definitely a respectable mark. It's not like it's an auto play or something like that, but Timbers have been very, very leaky. They're still without Crépeau and Miller, and they've definitely been playing some worse teams as of late, just generally being in the West. After the top 3 or 4 in the West, it's really, really up for grabs, and not, they're just beating who's in front of them, and that's completely fine. Like, they've been very good offensively, but even in these wins, they've given up goals. They give up 1 to Nashville late with a red card. Their loss in the 4th of July was a 3-2 loss to Dallas. In the win against Minnesota, they gave up 2. They gave up 1 to the Earthquakes on the road. And even at home, they're giving up goals. They've given up a goal in just about almost every home game besides that Whitecaps game. So RSL definitely has the capability to score here. Obviously, they're one of the top teams in the West, and they have really no one missing. Diego Luna should have been in that Olympic squad. That's a whole separate discussion. That's just an unbelievable that he wasn't included. But it's good for us. It's good for RSL. And once again, in a game that I think should be a shootout, I'm simply going to trust the better team to get a couple goals here for a really, really good price. And RSL has had 3 straight home matches in a row. They don't really have to travel far here. And yeah, it should be full strength. It should be a really, really entertaining game for a Portland team that plays really back and forth. And yeah, I'm going to trust Chicho Arango and the rest of the guys to give us 2 goals in a really, really good game. Here we have potentially the game of the season, an MLS Cup Final rematch. Columbus Crew, obviously the defending champs. They got to play that final at home. They beat LAFC 2-1. And here we go. This is going to be obviously the match of the week, possibly match of the season once again. First in the West versus third in the East. Columbus really sort of only third in the East mainly due to lack of playing as many games due to the Champions Cup. And man, this is just going to be a high class game on all levels. Columbus obviously has to travel here, but they have 4 wins in a row. LAFC also 4 wins in a row, including that Open Cup win against New Mexico in midweek. So they're going to be a little bit, less fresh, but they also had that game against Houston postponed on the weekend. So it kind of balances out there. And, this should be full strength. LAFC plays basically a full strength lineup every game. Buwanga literally never misses a minute, even in these Open Cup games. And really, both these teams are going to be basically full strength. Tillman is suspended for this one. And Oliveira is actually gone, though, with Uruguay still for that 3rd place game in Copa America. So a little bit lacking. One midfield player gone, one kind of forward gone on the wing. But still, this is really a pick'em. LAFC they haven't lost a home match. They've only drawn 2 of their 10, 12, whatever home matches. And honestly, if you looked at their schedule, though, their home matches, you would expect them, as it looks for now, to be really all of these teams. Their only draws were to Kansas City, their 2nd home match of the year, and then Red Bulls. And Red Bulls are probably the most balanced team they faced all season at home, and they got a draw there. And their only other one you would expect them to maybe not win was against LA Galaxy, and they did squeak out a win in that El Tráfico at home. So listen, the Crew are it's still, in my opinion, the best team in MLS, and I'm going to go here for the best bet, +0.5, so they can draw. This can be a draw. To me, this just feels like a draw. These teams are really nothing much separating them besides the home field advantage. And the Crew will have all week to prepare for this game. They're going to go full strength. Obviously, though, they're missing Schulte since he's gone with the Olympic team. So that's a bit of a, definitely concern there with the replacement being in. But this should have goals on both ends. I don't see much separating these teams. And I just simply think, regardless of the home field advantage, Columbus is the better team. LAFC has to show that they can beat them. So I'm going to trust Columbus to at least come out of here with a draw, and both these teams, would be happy with that, I would say. So that's going to be my 4th best bet of the show. So we're wrapping up the slate here with San Jose hosting Kansas City, and we're wrapping up with our final best bet as well. And this is an ugly one, I will admit. This is basically just at my limit for this juice here, but I'm taking San Jose team total over 1.5, and obviously, these are 2 of the 2 worst teams in the West for sure. But it's really a spot play, and San Jose obviously coming off a much needed win against the Fire. Their first clean sheet of the season, 1-0 at home. They get to stay home. Meanwhile, Kansas City obviously got that Open Cup win against Dallas, and then they beat Dallas the previous weekend. So back-to-back wins there, but they're obviously on much shorter rest, and now they have to travel all the way to the West Coast. And in the reverse fixture, it was 2-1 to Kansas City at home. So still, I think there can be goals on both sides in this one. I'm not going to trust the Earthquakes to win the game, but it's just a situational play here where Kansas City is definitely going to rotate. They're already thin as it is, and their defense is just terrible. They're a bottom 5 defense. They're a bottom 5 offense. They're a bottom 7 defense in terms of the numbers and expected goals and all that. And San Jose's offense, they kind of rotate a little bit for that Fire match with Pellegrino kind of coming in late, so he should be fresh here, and a couple other attacking options. Hernan Lopez got the goal in that Fire game, so he's been looking really good, individually. So I think just getting to stay at home here, Kansas City on the very short rest, and they obviously are in high spirits, but I think it's just a situational play here where San Jose money line is basically like +105, +110 or whatever. So it's not too much of a difference here between the team total and money line. I will never trust this defense. Both these defenses are terrible, but it's clear that San Jose has the capability of scoring against this team from the reverse fixture, and just in general, they're also in a bit of higher spirits. So this is just at my tolerance here, but I'm going to trust this attack to, even this could be a 2-2 game, but with a high scoring game, because even with the short rest, Kansas City is anyone can score on the San Jose defense, which is also might be without Akopo and Costa based on some injuries they picked up. So, but yeah, I'm gonna put my faith in San Jose at home and see where it takes us. But this is definitely a very rare spot to take with them, and I'm gonna see where it goes. But if not now, I don't know who they can score, 2 against and to trust them against. So yeah, that's gonna wrap up the show plays. Thanks for tuning into the video, everyone. If you enjoy the content, please make sure to like up this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos, for more content. And make sure to follow the Twitter as well, at MLS Digest, if I post any other news related to this slate and just in general, MLS news, discussion, updates. It's all on that Twitter account. And if I have any more bets for this weekend, it'll be dependent on lineups and all that. So once the game times roll around, I'll be posting more on there for sure. So make sure to be tuned into those updates. And yeah, this is a really loaded slate. I really like this slate. We obviously have LAFC versus Crew, the MLS Cup Final rematch to headline it, and then a lot more interesting matchups in my opinion, especially in the West. And yeah, including this slate, we only have 3 more slates, including this one, to wrap up this portion of the season before we get into a break with the month-long Leagues Cup with the Liga MX teams. So we'll have our own dedicated shows for that, but for now, I really want to close out these last few couple of weeks with this weekend, the midweek Wednesday slate, and the next Saturday slate. Those last few weekends to keep rolling up our bets and continue this positive trend. And yeah, but all these are interesting matchups. I hope you enjoy the content, guys, once again, and please make sure to like the video. And I'll see you shortly for this midweek Wednesday slate, week 26. So yeah, be posted for that video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.